First, Jan'19 International is a small multinational trading into the agro-commodity business on the Black Sea. So we have factories. We are Transoil. It's vegetable oil, exactly. So we are crushing sunflower seeds, producing vegetable oil, and exporting from Moldova, from Romania, and Georgia, where we have factories. We have also farming, 82,000 hectares. We are employing more than 2,500 employees. And we are exporting about 1 million tons of dry bulk cargo from the Black Sea. So few numbers. I'm 30 years experience in the commodity trading. And I would like to introduce this session with the changes over the commodity trade with the new technology and the consequences. I would say 2-3 decades ago, the business model changed completely from 30 years ago till now, obviously. The first business model was based for multinational in the commodity and agro-commodity business, was based to ship large volume of goods from FOB to CIF and in between making money. It was in the early 80s till 90s. And over a sudden they realized that the world is changing, and Cargill, for example, in the mid-90s, completely to change completely their orientation and not to do trading anymore, but to invest into assets, trying to search for the added value in this business. Added value, a lot of companies started to invest into port terminal, factories, trying to find, or transformation, trying to find the last penny, last margin from this. Till early 2000, this investment into assets was working. In early 2000, internet arrived, and internet transparency destroyed completely all the margin. And all the buyers in Western Africa knew the price of the rice in Thailand, and so on. So the margin shrank and become to very little, close to zero. So they have to find a new margin, and now people are searching through the new technology with Internet of Things or big data or blockchain, how they can keep surviving, reducing costings of transportation, searching for live information, making more efficient the trade through Internet of Things and the blockchain industry. So that's what I would like to introduce. Maybe you can introduce yourself first.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Robert Zaremba, co-founder and the CTO of Cerealia, which I will have a pleasure to present you more in details right after Kerry will describe some insights of the market. I'm a computer scientist and an entrepreneur. I was previously in 2 other startups, notably also creating a market intelligence platform for agri-industry, working in distributed task management and task optimization for Nokia. And here with my partner, Andrei Grigorov, we're creating a trading platform for traders.
For agro-commodities.
For agro-commodities.
So I'm here because we did early November through the Cerealia platform. The very first business was confirmed on the Black Sea. Grain business was confirmed with the technology, with the blockchain technology. So we did not negotiate it through the platform yet, but we confirmed the business and we digitalized the contract, and the confirmation and the signatures were digitalized through the blockchain with the access of the Cerealia platform. Actually, in the agro-commodity business, and their financial players, I would say investment funds, which are playing on Chicago, actually we're probably the very first to use the new technology. First with Internet of Things, that they are using live data to monitor the market, for example, or to monitor buyers or needs, or to read, for example, USDA reports for the supply and demand. So when the supply and demand is given by the American authorities, for the size of the crop, they have a machine which are reading, analyzing immediately in few seconds a lot of data, and immediately passing the orders on market to buy or sell. This is, they were the very first to use it. To use this technology. Now it goes more. These technologies are the big grain merchants are thinking now to the one I'm talking with, which are moving physical cargoes, are really thinking and investing in such approach, like in the crude oil industry. Most probably the blockchain will be used in the energy sector before the soft commodities, because the energy sector is much more standardized than the contract. The size, the scale of the contract as well is much bigger, but the quality of the cargoes are much more standardized than in the grain or in metals industry. For example. Then the big data as well are used as well, for example, by farmers to spread the fertilizer into the fields with their tractors to optimize the parcel, and they want to get the same crop, or to optimize the size of the crop according to the land scale they are working on. So it's very, very interesting, because now the farmers in their tractors in US, they are equipped with computers and live data, and with satellite pictures as well, and everything is complied with new technology. I would say, for example, the blockchain is commonly used actually for the traceability, for the food security. We know, for example, Walmart is using in US, they are using the blockchain. They know exactly which cow has been slaughtered and the piece of meat in which supermarket it is distributed. So they follow up for the food securities. It is commonly used by the car makers, Porsche, for example, to follow up the spare parts in the car. But in the food as well, it starts to be commonly used for the traceability for the organic product. So when organic, it's bio-organic is getting more fashion, I would say, that people want to live longer. So the crops are identified from the field, and now going back to the distribution more and more. I would say not all around, but more and more. And the regulation, especially the European regulation, after so many frauds in this supposed to be organic, but which was not, now are traced much more through the blockchain. Depending countries, of course. In US, it is more implemented than in Europe, but it's coming on. What I would say that then for the trading houses, I would say beside the trading house, there is also the banking industry. Banking industry, they realized that they might be lost somehow very fast with this new technology into the trade finance. Actually, they are providing funds for commodity trading. And as we heard yesterday in some presentation with Comgo and others, they are very much interested into this. They started to do some pool with Comgo, for example, with crude oil companies and other bankers, because I do believe that the tokenization will be maybe not starting with the grains, but it will start into commodities, most probably again into energy, sooner or later, and will come later on into the soft commodities, sugar, grains, and others. And it will be very useful for certain farmers, depending their location, to trade normally and eventually to avoid to be sanctioned because they are located in certain places which is not allowed by Americans, for example. But also the trading houses are investing. I mean, it will, the blockchain technology will not necessarily change the trade, but will reduce the costings, as I said, especially through the digitalization, especially for the documentation, the cargo documentation, which is actually passing through from the origin, from the port, from the port agent to the bank, and from one bank to another, and in between checked by a lot of people. All of this will be avoided and sent directly from the port through the blockchain directly to a lot of people, bankers, laboratories for analyzing the cargoes and so on. So all documentation will be complied quicker and most cost efficient. We will reduce the costings obviously and the manning force as well into the trading houses. So for sure. So that's why they are trying, and the efficiencies as well in the rapidity of the process. No need to send a DHL, but in 1 second, the documentation will arrive into the buyer bank, into the buyer as well, and all be accessible quickly and easier. DHL takes time. If you have a short route cargo, I mean short trip from the load port to the discharge port, it takes only 48 hours, for example, on the Mediterranean Sea. And it can be a big issue. The vessel can arrive time to time before the documentation, and it takes time and money and so on. So digitalization will be a cost saving for sure. So I do believe in it. It will take more time because the soft commodity are usually very conservative. We are talking about trading houses which are existing for more than a century, for certain of them 150 years. Already existing. So for these people, it takes time to adapt. They are thinking about, for sure. Again, it will not change the industry, but modernize the industry. And it will come most probably from the energy, which is a more new sector compared with the soft commodity. The energy is just 100 years existing. The soft commodity is existing for 1,000 years. So here we are.
Thank you, Trey, for a great introduction. Can you put the slides on?
So here now is a Cerealia presentation, which is the Robert company, and we did this first transaction on the Black Sea in November through their platform.
Correct. So I'm here now to talk a little bit in details of the application of what Thierry described, and try to provide you how this in fact applies to the real world use cases. So Cerealia is a startup. We started with Andre summer 2018, so it has roughly 6 months already. As Thierry mentioned, we did MVP. We created very first ever blockchain trade, a Black Sea blockchain trade, which is registered and was audited by an Oracle expert. The proof of this was then also confirmed and it's stated in the S&P Platts, in some blockchain-related press. Now we are approaching the second pilot, which will cover the execution flow and tracing the execution flow, and hopefully we'll release. We will reach the production release in Q2 this year, so in a few months. So as I introduce myself, and Andre, my partner, he's a trader, and I'm pretty happy from, let's say, this collaboration here, because we create a fintech platform, new technology platform for traders, and we have this mixture of the experience. Myself, I was I was involved in many blockchain projects. Notably, I'm also co-authoring the Ethereum, the GET client. Did many audits and analysis of the ICOs and smart contracts. And Andre has 20 years experience with the international trade, working both with the smaller companies and international companies. So the market we are tackling, I don't need to very much introduce here, but it counts for 80 billion yearly. And we are targeting the Black Sea and the Med Sea area. And just for information, in the audience over here, who is a trader? Or an agribusiness trader? Okay, great. And is there anyone who is interested in like a trade finance or a fund also? Okay. So the problem we are stating here and solving is dependency on the US dollar. The international trade is denominated in the US dollar. In the countries where we import and export most of the commodities, they are either under the sanctions or they have the problem to originate the US dollar. Acute lack of the trade finance, also related to the US dollar. It's either very expensive. In Europe, we can have very easily a trade finance for around 8%. In Black Sea area countries, it goes up to 16% or even more. It's also somehow bind to the banking industry, because traditionally the banks who enter the market and provide the finance, whereas we have many funds, many alternative sources of the trade finance, and this is what we would like to utilize to provide, in fact, pretty safe asset class for the traditional investors, for alternative investors. Commercially inefficient contracts. So what Thierry was describing here, like especially even when the distance is small and the traditional trading business is still, let's deeply dive into the old paper documentation. It can create many disputes or many arguments. The studies shows that it costs yearly $2 billion, this inefficiency. And the lack of solutions for small and medium companies. The internationals, they have everything. They have the banks, they have the infrastructure. Small and medium companies, they have tougher and tougher time to compete with them. And the market share is smaller and smaller. If I remember correctly, it's now SMEs, market share is around 30% or even less. And this is what we want to help them. Probably you are familiar with this picture, or more or less what it represents. We have between like the buyer and the seller, we usually end up with 4 or 5 banks. We have the buyer bank, seller bank, the correspondent banks, intermediary banks, especially when there is a US dollar involved, and a lot of payments, a lot of messaging, a lot of contracts. Most of them, yes, we need it, but the way how it is done now is very, very inefficient. Electronic bill of ladings, they exist. They exist already for a few years. So we have, for example, Bolero. They are not widely adapted. And we want to promote this, let's say, digitalization. Last year at the Global Grains Geneva, yes, multinationals, they were trying to show up that, oh yeah, we want to help and provide support for the digitalization, for the digital documents. For us, this is a great news, because we can, let's say, support each other with this move. And we can already, in fact, apply these things. Especially that the paper bill of lading, usually they don't have much, let's say, legal sense. They don't have very often, they don't have a unique numbers, or there is something missing. So what we do, yes, we are blockchain based. What does it mean? That we're using a technology which allows you to easily exchange digital documents, provide the legal signatures, and let's say a whole framework where the agreements and the trust is inherited by the technology, not by the third party. So in like one word, maybe I wouldn't say transparency, but disintermediation. we want to, we already, in fact, we have a partner with who we want to provide the payments, which are where the parties are exchanging the money with their local or national currencies, so to avoid US dollar or even euro. Our next pilot in March will involve a Turkish buyer, most probably, this is still not confirmed, Turkish buyer and a Russian seller, and they will trade directly in Russian rubles. And finally, the trade finance. So we are welcome, the banks, but we want to provide, let's say, more competitive marketplace where in emerging markets the parties can get the trade finance below 10%. I'm not sure if I want to talk about it, but anyone would like to have a very quick intro? Like, okay. So this is how it is now. Yes, we don't in a business. Yes, especially when there is a big money involved. The laser doesn't work, right? Oh, okay, this on the screen doesn't work. We come up with this escrow, with the custodies, with intermediaries, with the middlemen, just because we don't trust each other, because we are very often exposing ourselves to the, let's say, market inefficiencies, to take an advantage of it and maybe reach the disputes. So the money is not safe, especially that this process is asynchronous. What does it mean? That when I give you the money, I am not necessarily getting the cargo in the same time. It takes time to do this exchange. Money transfer is much faster, like in theory, at least, than moving the goods. So that's why we have the intermediary. The whole idea of the blockchain is that to put everything what can be digitalized into a common ledger and have a system, have an algorithms to manage the transfers or the orders, or the request, transactions. It can be anything. It doesn't need to be a financial transaction. It can be a decision. It can be some approval. And we trust the system. We trust the overall architecture, which can't be easily or technically or sorry, feasibly manipulated. What I would like to maybe add here is that even in the money, yes, when you have the money are digital already. Yeah, so in a bank, for example, when we put the money, 10 millions, 20 millions to cover our trade, yes, this money, they don't exist physically. Yes, there were just numbers, the records on a database, and there are special protocols which sends the messages to credit on one account and debit on the second account. So it doesn't change much, in fact. Yes, if you use the blockchain or if you use the traditional banking or use a SWIFT, it's already digital. The only difference is here that do we use the intermediary? Do we use the trust relying on the concept of the bank, or we can, let's say, shift it and put it into the automated process? And yeah, so this is what is the second part, that we can have, let's say, one whole, we can embrace the our needs, our trust within the, let's say, single network. I think I was talking a little bit about it yesterday. So there are many blockchains. This is what I would like to highlight there, and it means that when we talk about the blockchain, we don't talk about a very specific solution. We just talk about the idea that we can disintermediate custody. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the stablecoins, which is very related to the payments, especially that even today and recently I had a few interesting discussions. Myself, I was involved in one of the projects creating the stablecoins, and I'm very happy that almost every month I'm learning that there is some hidden background project within some corporate structures trying to create yet another stablecoin. It's good. There can be many stablecoins because they will provide more liquidity and more power into the market. What is a stablecoin? Because this is what I would like to explain here. it's an asset which we can put into the blockchain, or let's say it's a digital asset which can be controlled or managed by the blockchain. If a bank, for example, will create a smart contract, so the program on the blockchain which will manage the tokens, the, let's say, representation of the Swiss franc or on a euro, but in the blockchain, in the smart contract, we can already call it a stable coin. Yes? If we have a collateral for the gold or for any other asset, and we put this notion of it into the blockchain, it's a stable coin. It will represent the value of that asset on the blockchain. The difference here is that we can easily, or in a very regulated manner, exchange it or transfer it. So stable coins is a very, very broad term. In the blockchain, it's very important because then we can link it to the program which will represent, for example, the trade. So instead of having it in the custody, yes, we have it in the program. And what does it mean, for example, in the international trade, when we need to provide this, in the case of, for example, letter of the credit, that we have the money to cover the trade. We don't need to put it into the bank. We can put it in the program, which is an escrow account, and then if the program will get triggered that, for example, the goods have been delivered, it will automatically transfer these assets, these tokens, so let's say it's stable coins, we can think about the Swiss francs or Russian rubles, to the target account, which we specified in advance before, let's say, during the contract negotiation. This way, we don't need to rely on the bank. This way, we don't need to rely on any inefficiency caused by some communication. Yes, it happens automatically. Some people may wonder, is what if there is a dispute or arbitrage? Well, it's the same thing as today. Yes, so the money stays there. If let's say the request to release the funds is not valid, or a party, let's say, wants to challenge it, yes, this still can be encoded there. It doesn't mean, for example, that we need to release it immediately. We can say, okay, if there is a communication or a message to finalize the transfer, yes, the parties, they can decide yes, what they want to do. Do they want to do it immediately? Question?
So what, for example, if you have a quality dispute on the goods?
Yes.
And let's just say, if we look at the normal situation we're talking about, let's say you've got an LC, letter of credit, and then there's the opportunity to, for example, that letter of credit is open in Geneva, you can go to the Swiss courts and make various submissions. And you can, for example, suggest that there's been fraud. For example, suggest before the Swiss courts that fraud has been present, and that instead of releasing those funds, the court should make an order to stop their release. Now, how would you envisage, because this has always been my question with blockchain, how would you envisage the arbitral forum or the court? Because it's what you've just said is the parties will have a dispute and they can discuss together, but of course what you would ordinarily have is some sort of arbiter to determine, for example, in that situation whether or not there was a fraud. I mean, if there's a quality dispute, you can just have an agreement between the two of you, but then how does that work in terms of the blockchain? Do you have a one quantum only release, or can you agree to just release 90% of the funds? I just wondered if you'd ever thought about those things.
Yes, we thought about it, and we also, let's say, made a proof of concept, yes, or design how to solve it. So that's the most interesting use case, in fact, because let's say if the trade goes well, if let's say I receive the goods and I want to pay for you because I don't have any other reason to not to do it, yes, we believe that the trust, in fact, should come from the people. Yes, otherwise we can't do the business. So the problem happens is when we have this dispute. An idea for that is that if, let's say, the smart contract received, okay, there are a few solutions. One solution is that when the smart contract receives a signal that, okay, the goods have been delivered from on the destination port, and it wants to, let's say, release the funds, either, yes, we can add some like a window time frame where this before releasing the funds, yes, it can be challenged. So let's say me as a buyer, yes, if I want to challenge, if I want to stop, I can, let's say, click a pause button. Let's think about it this way, and it will stop. And we can add, like, say, many rules how we want to stop it, how we want to solve it.
If I may intervene, on their platform, there is several stages of the execution of the contract. So first of all, there is the quality, the samples are taken, sent, and there is the quality report is coming into the platform, and then the documentary instruction, vessel nomination, and so on. And there is different steps of in the execution of the contract. If there is a problem into the execution, indeed the buyer can make a pause eventually because there is a kind of dispute on the quality or something. But just what I would like to add between brackets, that the blockchain technology as well with this execution, and maybe later on in the future some smart contract could educate some buyers from Middle East, for example, which are not, they are a fulfilling contract, but they are not super educated into to properly execute all the steps of the vessel nomination, documentation properly, timely, because time is money. And this also blockchain could trigger later on some penalties, for example, for the buyer or the seller if they are not timely into the process of the execution as well.
So, now being a little bit more specific, the way how we solve it, yes, is that each transactional operation, by transactional operation, it's either a financial operation or an agreement. Agreement in our case is also a transaction. Requires an approval. So let's say if you send me some documents which are corresponding to some certain stage, I don't know, let's say laboratory documents, then I have to approve it. So you make a request that, okay, I'm delivering these documents, you sign it digitally. The platform creates a trigger that, hey, you have, I don't know, let's say, because there is an agreement always within the process that I have to confirm it, let's say, in the next 24 hours. And usually this, we are incentivizing people, yes, to put as many details for that in the contract as possible. So then there is what we call a time bomb. It's showing in the platform that, okay, I have only 24 hours to either approve or reject these documents. If I reject it, yes, I need to put a reason, and the other counterparty sees it, and the time is passing. We can amend it if the parties agree. So I can, for example, issue an amendment and say, okay, like for this specific thing or this specific stage, instead of 24 hours, I want to have 36 hours or more. And the same goes for the payment. So let's say that, okay, the cargo arrived, I don't know, shipper or whoever, yes, is now triggering that, okay, I did my job, and now I need to approve it. This is how we do it now. Yeah, so the buyer has to approve it to release the funds. If the buyer will not approve it, and the seller is waiting and saying, hey, I already did my job, here is the time, now you need to release the funds. If the buyer will not do it, will ignore it, then there is a whole proof on the blockchain about all the agreements we did, about all, there is a whole trace what happened. So then the seller can go to can start an arbitration and say, look, this is, I was fair in the process, I did all of these things, all of this is proved. Up until this stage, the buyer was approving also what I sent to him. So now it's very clear.
Just one word. In case of actual arbitration, the defendant, claimant, has to be both parties anyhow. They have to compile all the correspondences and evidences to argue on their side. On the blockchain, all is registered, all is recorded. So including the chat before the transaction happened. So if something has not been clearly understood from one side or the other, everything is compiled and everything is recorded and can be used for arbitration, clearly. And just also to finish that actually the contract, once the contract is done on the paperwork, we are all the time pushing the buyer to sign the contract. Some of them are reacting quickly, and some countries, they are coming back 2 weeks after because they want to change one word here, one word there after the negotiation. With the blockchain, the digitalization and the signature will be quicker and automatic. So once the contract is fixed, the digitalization is done, and when we sign the contract, the buyer and seller, and it was immediately done. I mean,
and that's right.
Right after the negotiation.
Like probably one of the biggest value proposition here is that the parties, they don't need to individually collect what happened, because it's in a one ledger. Of course, it's encrypted. So let's say if you do a trade, yes, the third party will not see the details. They even don't see who is doing the trade, that Thierry is involved, for example. Even if there was before a relation with this third party person, a trading relation, they can't do it. And I mean, this is the way how we do it. All the documentation is there in the ledger, and then the parties risk, they know what's their risk, because they agree on the things, they have this negotiation. I will present a team a little bit later, but also in our advisory board, next to Thierry, we have Svitu Stil. He's president of GAFTA. So, and he's always repeating and saying to us, the word from my mouth is, I don't remember it, but what I say is my agreement, yes?
My word is my bond.
My word, okay. you know better than me. I'm a computer scientist.
It used to be. I mean, in the commodity industry, was my word is my bond, indeed. But nowadays, it's less and less respected.
And we want, in fact, to put it back in, like, bring this this value of it back into the power. That even if there is this negotiation chat, it's happening in the one place. Yes, and the parties, they know what they do.
I just would like to add something, that the time is money, and nowadays the multinational they use before to train the youth for the execution. They were going to the finance, to the shipping before going to trading. They were training the people there inside the group. Now they have no time for that, so they are taking youth post-graduated and sending them to operations immediately, to execution, with very little experience. So I would say the blockchain will force the people to respect or to educate for the execution of smart contract, to respect the scales and the proper execution. I would say even without experience or very little experience. So I think that it's a good thing as well.
Going very quickly, I just wanted, there was some question?
I want to ask, is, according to you, blockchain is much more an evolution or a revolution? Because
many people, they want to say about the revolution because they promote themselves, or they want to say, okay, we are doing blockchain, so we are in this better part. I think it's an evolution. Most of these things, I believe, many of these things, you don't need a blockchain to do it. It's just easier and more, how to say, easier and cheaper to do it. Yes, like the bank, yes, which is, let's say, the most simple example of the transfer of the value, yes, money, for example. They are existing for thousands of years, and even recently they didn't use, even now they don't use blockchain for doing the exchange. So you can really transfer the money, transfer anything you want. Yes, the stock exchange, for the moment, the Swiss is announcing that they're migrating to the blockchain-based stock exchange, creating it. Summer this year. Operates, Nasdaq is operating, yes, internationally, yes, without the blockchain. So,
if I may answer to your question, because we have two different angles and point of view. Is the technician, the young generation on the blockchain, and I'm the older generation from the real economy. So I mean, we are two different worlds. In the commodity, I think it's not a revolution, but it's an evolution. It's a necessary evolution. It's a must. Actually, people have no choice than to save money, time, money, and it will not make a revolution into the trade, but a necessary evolution. But be careful, as soon as the humanity evaluate with internet or with the steam or electricity, with something new, we just shift the problems. We solve some problems, but we create new issues. So as soon as we cure a disease, a new one is appearing. So when the steam appeared 100 years ago or 200 into the industry, a lot of workers went jobless. So actually it's an evolution, and for sure this evolution will create more jobless as well. But I'm not sure that it will be a revolution. This is a necessary step to my point of view.
Correct. In fact, yes. I mean, my sentence or what I wanted to say is that I disagree with this revolution. Me personally, I would also even from the technological perspective, I prefer to understand it as an evolution. If I may just make a very quick digression, if I would like to search from the, let's say, IT world, where is the revolution? I would say it's AI, artificial intelligence. This brings way more revolutionary things than the blockchain. I put this slide because, I was involved in a few discussions with the World Bank. They are creating a few very nice projects. So here in this presentation, I wanted to highlight a few things, what is the value proposition, and also that it's already adapted. So last year, I was participating in a research funded by the Dutch government for a digital identity, and it's still continuing. World Bank is involved. They have the collaboration with France and Belgium. It's a big project, and what I'm saying is here, yesterday I met an IT group from Austria who are also bringing or working with doing a government project to integrate a blockchain within some digital identity. And this is something we also want to embrace in Cerealia, that the signatures, or let's say the identity or the claims, yes, could be in fact put into a different level, another level, that we trust each other more, and we also bring more efficiency. It also gives a little bit more risk to the parties, but it makes all the process more responsible. So on 6 I mentioned, Walmart was also a few times mentioned, China. What I want to say maybe about the China, people were saying, or probably you heard in the news, that China is banning ICO, China is banning tokens, projects. But China, for them so far, is the biggest blockchain hub in the world. Amount of the blockchain projects there is by far, there's nothing, you can't find this amount in whole Europe. And this is what's also embracing the efficiency. Advantages of the Cerealia trade finance. So as we mentioned that, if we build now this picture that we can put many conditions in a smart contract, and people can interact with it lively, as we described that, approve it, reject it, control it, trace it. Another thing is here that the person who is integrating with it, yes, can have this digital identity confirmed by a bank or some legal institution. And with this, yes, whatever we want to happen, or legally or not legally, yes, can be also more efficient, because we have already approved data about ourselves, which can be linked to another financial institutions. So if now I want to have a credit or a trade finance from alternative investment or alternative actor with who doesn't know us, yeah, but he is able to bring a very competitive trade finance, since we have a proven on a ledger as track of the records what we did, it can be anonymous, so it doesn't need to say that personally who was involved. Yes, but there is a proof that this entity was fair, was trading this many times. Overall, they turned, I don't know, this amount of millions or billions, and multiple other data which can be required by the financial institution. Then it's enough. Yes, this decision can be done in the matters of minutes, hours, instead of sending the paper and starting the collaboration with a new financial institution to get the credit. So in Cerealia, now maybe more specifically, so we are working a little bit on a brokerage model, but in a new brokerage model. Maybe Thierry will be able to better explain it. So we deliver the tools for the traders. Yes, we don't, let's say, try to make it where the traders are less useful than today, but they have more power to do their job more efficiently. So our platform works based on the commission model, like in the brokerage house, but overall, yes, in our financial model, we can discuss it later. Yes, they gain the value. And would you like to add something? Upcoming delivery, since Andre has done a lot of things in Russian and the Black Sea market, we are focusing, and also this is the biggest market for the grain. We are targeting Black Sea and the Med Sea. As already mentioned, we completed this pilot. We verified our smart contracts. Everything is on a public, permissionless blockchain. In our opinion, this allows for the more integration, especially for banks, KYC, and having the process more fluid. We are on the way with discussing with few potential partners for the payment gateways, where we can, let's say, quickly exchange the money. On a later stage, we want to integrate the trade finance. So we already also have the discussions ongoing, but the problem, it's not the problem, it's just the market is not yet there to apply it. So we need to, let's say, I wouldn't say wait, but give it a time to adopt it.
Matter of timing.
Yes. Our team. So we already have like a team of developers, digital specialists who were, like, for example, Michael. He was involved in many IT projects in the banks. From the banking industry, Philip, he was an advisor for many banks or bank strategists. So Stephen, I already introduced, and Natalia, she's a trader. Thomas is working for AgriCensus, being like a reporter and a price assessor. Alex was working for Louis Dreyfus. He's responsible for the risk management. And in fact, he was giving us a perfect use case that what we are doing, in fact, can also work with international companies to help them structurize the flow. So he has, in our platform or structure, his own hidden projects, yes, to research how we can work with the bigger companies. And Thierry, notably here, very happy to share this session with you. Yeah, that's what we already mentioned. So we've been present in the Global Organization Geneva, IOM, Digital Commodities in London, Caspian Week here. Thank you very much, organizers. DEFCON, last Monday, there was the biggest, let's say, state-supported blockchain conference in Geneva. So we we finished our financial model and investment deck. So now currently looking for the investors. We want to expand now globally after the platform release. So not only, initial target and the validation is on a Black Sea market. The validation, in fact, we already did. There are many trading offices around Geneva Lake, and we have a big network in Russia. And for this later stage, what I already mentioned, yes, so trade finance lenders or family offices. This is kind of the organizations we are looking for to collaborate. And I would like to conclude with Jimmy Dimon words. He's a CEO of JP Morgan. Yeah, so they are also one of the biggest adopters of the blockchain. Yeah, so he said that JP Morgan will use blockchain for a whole lot of things, so not only the financial operations, but also risk operations, legal operations. And that's a good thing. Looking forward for that. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Interesting presentation. It reminds me of the model of Amazon, where they change the way we buy books. So you have a platform that you trust. The payment is organized. You can see where your book is, when it's going to come. So do you see a similar evolution in the trade where the banks may lose their relevance at the end?
Last year, I think it was around May, we've been at the Thomson Reuters conference, and we've been speaking with Chief Information Officer, or something like that, sorry, from ING. And they're already preparing for that, to lose their share in the trade finance.
If I can answer precisely, previously I said that the documentation, the shipping documentation, goes from the origin to the seller's bank, and from the seller's bank to buyer's bank. Previously, when we know very well the buyer, and the buyer know very well the seller, the buyer sent the surveying company, he knows the quality, they took samples, everything is fine, so they are ready to pay, and they used to pay before against only the mail copy of documents. So we used to send only the copy of the shipping documents by mail, and they were effecting the payment. The bankers took this flow and said that now it's not possible for compliance. You have to send the shipping documents directly to us only, even if both parties are okay. Shipping documents goes through us. For that, they charge about $1,500 per ship. Can be large or small, about. Just to check pack of documents like that, to do an introduction letter, which is pre-printed, and they resend it to the buyer's bank. Buyer's bank is also charging to the buyer to check the documents, to compile all the documents. All of this money will disappear, obviously. I'm not talking about the interest, because the interests are peanuts. I mean, actually the money costs little compared with 10 years ago. So they had to charge something into the process to find monies. For sure, they're going to lose, so that's why they invested ING, Société Générale, HSBC, all the bigger bankers, Credit Suisse, and others, invested into a platform together with crude oil trader, Comgo, for example, is Miss... she's coming from Suleiman Badi, yes. She's coming from Société Générale, and in this platform there is a Total and the biggest Gunvor and the biggest oil trader. So that's why they already invested. This is just an example. There is so many other examples, and they invested because they don't want to be lost. They know that they're going to lose a lot of money, and they want to keep on the track and keep providing tokenization or somehow, but to stay in business, obviously. So they are scared, for sure.
Maybe if I may make a note one here, that we are not yet there, yes, to basically provide this overall financial capabilities. Yes, it's just coming. Yes, we can't be like, maybe we're in the front line, but we don't want to be a front runner to, you know, change drastically change the behavior. Step by step is coming in. Also, like, as for the tracing, you were asking about the tracing. Thierry was mentioning, yes, that there are many projects ongoing about the tracing. As a Cerealia, we are targeting traders and their execution flow. We don't want to create, let's say, a tracing capabilities about the cargo and all these things, but we are happy and want, in fact, to integrate. We want to leave this business to someone else and possibly to integrate it. Yeah, so we are focusing really on the trading flow and what's involved in that, like the documents and the finance. But there is a lot of room for many interesting projects. And essentially, maybe, I don't know if I use this word, but then I forgot. Yes, we want to be a kind of a marketplace. yes, where different solutions can reach the traders more efficiently.
Thank you for the presentation. I think that from the point of view of trading companies, the real question is to understand when and how to adapt. Is there any leader in somehow giving the input to start also to enter into that? That's one of the questions that we are, matter of factly, having a look around what others, what competitors, what banks are doing, what other industries are doing, but actually it's difficult to understand how and when to adapt. Maybe Thierry's question also for you.
Yes, to answer you, in the past 30 years, I saw many big grain merchants which were existing for more than 100 years who disappeared. They disappeared in early 2000 when the internet arrived because they could not adapt to this transparency and the margin shrinking. Continental Grains, for example, Compagnie André in Switzerland, which was very well known, with 70 years and more, disappeared, Tradigrain and many others. So very large companies. We saw in the mid 2000, the years 2000, starting from 2005 to 2010, a concentration, because they couldn't find any more margin, so the bigger were buying the smaller and merging, and for all merger it was slash of the manning force. Kofco bought Nidera and many others. Actually, Bunge is not in the good shape, and other company like Glencore were looking over. But now, to answer precisely your question, now once this merger are more or less finished, they have no choice. They have no choice. So now the time is the counting, and they have no choice to adapt and to go fast. I think it's going to take a couple of years, but I mean, how is going to be soon. They have no many choice. And some of them, including large corporations like Dreyfus or others, they are watching to merge with someone, and it couldn't match with conflict of interest, but they will be forced. Otherwise, some of them will disappear again. So it's a matter of survival, simply.
Thank you so much for your reply. I'd like to ask, a general idea about the cost of such investment for trading companies. It depends, of course, but not to have a general idea. Yeah.
The cost versus the saving, to me, the costs are not so high. If they invest, let's say, a couple of $1 million with an IT group and development before to be implemented, it's not that much compared versus what they could save already on the first year. So I think that the costings are not so much important in this. It's going to be more difficult for the smaller. Yes. For the smaller, it's going to be difficult. That's why for our companies, for example, we will be forced to use. We are not big enough. Transoil is $500 million, is 1 million ton cargo, 2,500 employees overworld, but we are small compared with the others. So we will be forced to use some existing platforms to also provide some services, to client services, and also to reduce our costings.
A lot of room for further merger.
Yes, I think so. Yes, for middle-sized company, for example, I was talking about Dreyfus. Dreyfus is a large corporation, but small compared to Kofco. So everything is relative. So Dreyfus is large, but compared to Cargill is small, and Cargill is even small compared to Kofco or Glencore, which are much bigger. So yes, there is some rooms for certain to merge or to disappear. And anyhow to invest into the new technology, definitely.
The cost, in fact, for the integration into the new technologies, where there is in Cerealia, for example, platform as a service, is much lower because, in fact, we don't want to change the way the traders behave, but We want to just to support them. Yeah. So, for example, we want to offer them their digital identity and show them, how they can trade more efficiently.
I would like to. Sorry. Go ahead.
Do what they do. Yes, we don't want to say like, okay, now the trades works totally differently. No, it's just we have a little bit more tools to make it more safer, I would say.
Yes, about the safety, I wanted to add that the regulations, the food safety regulations, the European regulation especially, because the Europeans are the specialists to regulate everything. So the food regulation are also pushing in that way to use the blockchain and the new technology definitely to avoid to have some horse meat into the lasagne, as we saw many years. Doesn't mean that the horse meat is bad, but when it's written into the pack, it's beef. It has to be beef, and the traceability with the blockchain will able to this. And for sure, the regulation for dioxins, aflatoxin. I mean, 20 years ago when we were trading cargo, it was much more simple. Actually, now you need to be a chemist almost to trade some corn. Because you have the spectra of the analysis is so wild now due to these regulations. So the blockchain definitely for the digitalization will help to have this result, to transmit this result from the labs, to save time and money for sure.
But I think it will take years. We are still like...
Yes, a couple of years, but not so long. For this transmission of documents, directly digitalization of the documents, I think is going to be very fast.
Yes, this one is yes, but tracing, for example, now, in most of the cases, this is somehow a premium product or a proof of concept that doesn't work. What Walmart did, for example, for their Thanksgiving Day, so they wanted to offer to Americans traced, how it's called, dindon, what they eat on a turkey, exactly. Like blockchain traced, blockchain proof of provision, yes, of a turkey for the families in US. Yeah, back to the farm. Like this turkey was now like having a sun and breathing the fresh air and all these things. So they did it like a pilot for with a Walmart. But that was a showcase, essentially. Yeah. So.
And the last one question.
Yeah, my name is Dennis. I'm angel investor. Just wanted to double check a couple of numbers, maybe to refresh a couple of numbers that you've mentioned. First of all, when exactly do you expect to launch this product in real market? And do you have any expectation, like how many customers you expect the first year, etc.? A couple of numbers. And also, as far as I understood, you're looking for investors.
Correct.
You're raising probably the capital in seed round. So what capital do you want to raise? What is your valuation? Just a couple of basic numbers. Maybe for other investors will be interesting as well.
The business plan,
no, I just
business plan is existing.
Yeah, yes, but is it good to talk about it like publicly or not?
Yeah, you can obviously send the deck if it's ready. So tell what you can tell.
Okay.
In terms of launch, customers.
Yeah, no, there are cameras and everything. I just wondering if.
yeah. Well, I mean, launch dates, customers.
Yeah. So we plan to launch, let's say the first version. So we already have a beta in Q2. This will also depend about like what features we will put into. So, let's say our current plan, yes, that we want to do it at the beginning, the first part of the Q2. Then it may change a little bit depending on what we would like to put there. The first version of the platform, yes, it will be rather basic. We're already, let's say, building a network for our customers who wants to, in fact, be on this during this bootstrap process, bootstrap time after the release. So we have already a marketing strategy how we want to go with them. Let's call market acquisition. As for the customers, our initial plan is to have around like 6 up to 10 new trading offices per month. We are already working with a few brokers. That sounds maybe tricky or funny. with who we can basically collaborate to onboard at trading companies on our platform.
Do you have any preliminary interest from those customers, like for commercial contracts? For example, you have like interest from 5 customers already that are waiting some product details from you?
Yes, so we've been.
No, the president of the GAFTA, the Grain Association, Feed Trade Association, was supposed to be here, but at the last minute he could not. He's the managing director also of another Russian company, which is trading grains. They are also very much interested. All of this blockchain could be used later on, as I said, into the arbitration through the Grain Feed Association, I mean, or of the PHOSPHA Association. This is PHOSPHA. This is for the oilseeds. So I think that many participants are already pretty very much interested.
So the companies we've been already talking with, so we validated our product. We're validating it since September. Yeah, so they expressed they're willing to participate, especially during this bootstrap process when they will have a special deal. We can talk about it later. I mean, okay, I can maybe say it. Yes, during this bootstrap process, we want to work for free. I mean, all the services for free. So we will also want to get more feedback. We already get the feedback, but the platform is not functioning. It's not yet production ready. So there will be more, of course. And another thing is that, okay, our goal for the investment is to expand. So I think this is what I can say. We want to use these funds to really attack the market and work closely with the traders to onboard them and build the mass.
Marketing.
Sorry?
For the marketing. For the marketing.
Yeah, yes.
Well,
Do you need to invest alone in the product, or you just really need to invest only in customer acquisition rather than product investment?
I wouldn't say it's not critical for the product for the time being, but let's say, okay, we are now, okay, we can talk about it maybe later. I would say that it's not critical, but it's nice to have, let's say, let's put it this way.
let's thank Thierry and Robert with applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Please don't go far away. In 5 minutes, we're starting a very important topic, tax, legal, and compliance.